Hey, folks, this is Walt, once again masquerading as an actual journalist for the Indie Creator Spotlight on the Banff podcast. Today, we're going to get weird because the subject matter is weird, and only because when I saw this flash across my Kickstarter screen, I had to interview this gentleman. I'm talking to Mr. R. Thomas Favino. Did I say your last name correctly, sir?
Yeah, man, you nailed it. That was it. Got it in one.
and I got to know, what does the R stand for?
It's for Rick.
Nice.
It is, yeah. So the whole R. Thomas Favino thing was when I was about 14. I was a big fan of J. Michael Straczynski, and I was like, yeah, I like that. I'm gonna do that.
Right on, right on. Should I just refer to you as Mr. Favino, and should I say Signore after every time I?
No, you can go ahead and do Rick. That's the flip side to thinking you do something cool at 14 is you go, it's kind of complicated, right?
Yes, but you get to explain it on podcasts.
That's true.
Right, and the whole reason. Right. The whole reason we're here today is to talk about your project, Voodoo Detective. But I usually like to start the show with one of the questions that, if we really considered it, could probably create world peace, and that is, did you start off with spinner rack or comic book shop?
I was comic book shop. So growing up, I grew up in Rhode Island. And luckily, there was a comic book shop right around the corner, and I would go there after school just about every day.
Before you go any further,
no.
Before you go any further, I just got to know which shop, because I'm in Providence. So.
Oh, are you really?
Yeah.
Okay, so here's the thing. I moved out of Rhode Island. I left and headed to Texas when I was 17, and so I was there for probably as a kid. And all I remember is the guy's name was Joe. It was on Pontiac Avenue. In Cranston, I cannot remember the name of the shop. It was like a baseball card shop and a comic shop, and the name I don't remember it.
Right on. All right, so please continue. Spinner rack at comic shop. You went to the comic shop.
Yeah, so comic shops. Yeah, so I was big into comic books, and then even like the comic book cards. So even as a kid, I would like save up my milk money all week and go buy comics or comic book cards. So that was my life as a kid.
Right on. And did anything hook you at the time? Did you glom onto any one series or another?
So I should say that I started off like my whole foray into comics started when I found my like a box of musty comics in my grandparents' garage that belonged to my uncle, and so I just sat there and poured over them, and it was everything from like the 60s and 70s Marvel and DC. So right off the bat, I was just hooked on it all. I got this. I mean, it was probably like 40 or 50 just musty old comic books, and I fell in love.
Did you have to get any antivirals from going through all the must?
No, this is the 80s, so that stuff didn't even exist.
And when you started kind of getting into comics, did you gravitate toward one or another, Marvel, DC, like that?
No, so like I was the only kid I knew that read comics, so I didn't know I had to choose, right? To me, I just had all these characters at my disposal. So I was like in Green Lantern, Spider-Man, Batman. I'm a big fan of Robin, Tim Drake Robin. Growing up, we grew up around the same time. I remember when he was coming in, I was about 13 or 14, so that's my Robin. Still is my Robin. So yeah, no, that was for me. It was I got to play with all the toys in the sandbox. Nobody told me I couldn't.
Right on. Right on. And now, did you carry this love of comics all throughout, like when you were coming up, going to school, stuff like that? Did you in and out of comics, or did you pretty much
No, that was it. It's probably my first great love. I've been in it from that day on. Yeah, I maybe had like one summer in junior high where I was like maybe no comics, maybe go outside a little bit more, but I think it only lasted a couple weeks, and I was back into it reading. So, yeah, it's almost 30 years of reading comics.
Right on. That's fantastic.
Yeah.
And did you find a local comic shop where you are now?
So yeah, there's a few actually. So yeah, I'm in Texas now, in the Houston area, and there's a couple Dragon's Lair comics here in Houston that I go to, and Bedrock City. So yeah, there's a few I like to frequent.
Right on. And of course, do you drag comics to the coffee shop where you get to soak in all that atmosphere as you're reading?
So I do a lot of digital reading now, honestly, because most of my comics are Kickstarter backed, so I get the digital rewards. So yeah, I get to just bring my laptop with me everywhere I go.
Right on, right on. So when you started coming up and you're reading these comics, you're saying comics was your great love.
Hmm.
When did you decide? Yep, this is my jam. I got to do this.
So I think I was like every kid who read comics, who wanted to draw comics, right? I thought like I didn't realize people made these. I don't think like that connect wasn't there for me until I was probably in my late teens, and I was like, oh wait, like people do this. So to me, it was just like I want to draw these characters because that's what I can see, and I was constantly making up characters just to draw them. And it never even occurred to me that I was like, creating worlds here. I was just giving myself things to draw. Um, so I think, yeah, I think I was probably like 17 or 18, and I remember my mom was like, "You should be a writer," and I was like, "Mom, nobody can see what the writer does. Like, I'm going to draw these things." And it took a few more years, and I was like, "No, I think." I picked up Greg Rucka and Ed Brubaker's Gotham Central, and I was like, oh, I want to make this. I want to write comics like this. That was kind of the moment for me where I shifted from thinking I was going to draw them to wanting to write them.
Do you still draw these days?
A little bit, not a lot. I got a 7-year-old daughter, and she always asks me to draw pictures because she thinks I draw really well. So I'll draw it, and she's just completely enamored, and I'm like, it's okay.
Did you start her young on the Great Love?
Oh yeah, well, so yeah, it's always she knows. We will just talk about it. She knows who they are. I let her choose, right? I don't want to push it on her. She if she tells me she likes somebody, so Spider Gwen, right? Marvel Spider Gwen. Her she came out on the day of my daughter's birthday. In like I think it was like 4 years. My daughter was 4. And she loves that they share a birthday together. So she's like, Spider Gwen's my favorite character because we have the same birthday.
Did you say, hey, look, Dad did something special, Marvel Comics, we hooked this up.
I should have. No, I didn't.
It would have been hero for life. My
I would
dad
have been
a comic character for me.
right.
So you're into comics.
Mhm.
You're coming through. Getting older and deciding I can do this. I can write this.
Mhm.
When did you start saying to yourself, "Okay, I'm going to do this now"?
25. I said 25. I'm gonna be a comic book writer, and I said I had no idea how to do it. I At the time I think I was the most I could find. So yeah, this was like 10 years ago. So right, the most I could find at the time were like old movie scripts. Like Good Will Hunting was a movie script book that I found, and I love that movie. So that was probably the first thing where I looked at it and I was like, okay, well, this is how you turn a script into a movie. That's probably how you turn a comic book into a movie. So I studied a ton. I told myself I had 10 years to make a comic book, and I tell this story all the time. I had my first published work a month before I turned 35. So like it took me almost the whole 10 years to get a story out there, but I did it.
Right on.
So I was like, well, I'm gonna keep doing it now.
And what was the story?
It was actually the first Voodoo Detective story was put out through the Out of the Blue Twisted Pulp anthology from Stash Publishing. It was kickstarted last year, actually, like this month last year. So actually, Voodoo Detective has like a 1 year anniversary. I didn't even plan for, but it worked out that way.
Did can you still get it?
Yeah, it's actually I think it's on Amazon right now. I think it's in print. Just dropped you there. Or from the website, Stash Publishing website. I think you can get it there also. And so in that story, actually, if you check out the Kickstarter page, we made ash cans with that story in it earlier this year, and you can actually download the story from the site.
Right on. That's pretty groovy. Now, there we go. We're already starting with the buzzwords.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Showing that both our age and our area of origin.
Right.
So, like you were talking earlier, you said, hey, I did what everybody else did who was into comics. I started making up my own characters.
Mm-hmm.
Any of those characters survive today?
No, they were total ripoffs of like Wolverine, the Fantastic Four. I was big into the X-Men, so like for me, everybody was basically a mutant, right? It didn't matter what kind of power you gave them, you just called them a mutant. So I mean, I remember them, but they're no, those were building blocks. Yeah, no. When I started reading like Gotham Central, I like the real like the crime noir stuff just hooked me, and I was like, no, this is the kind of comics I want to do. So like Criminal was huge. Yeah, like Bendis, like I'm a Powers. I still love Powers.
Powers is tight. Yeah.
Yeah, it's such a good book. So yeah, those were the guys that I was looking to be like, well, I'm gonna make comics like those guys make comics. I'm gonna try to, anyways.
Right on. You had said you grabbed 10 years ago. You grabbed, hopefully not grabbed that screaming baby, but
No, sorry.
no, actually it makes for good radio.
There you go.
Um, but 10 years ago, you had said that you grabbed a script of Good Will Hunting, probably because you like the accent of the characters.
Oh yeah,
and,
that movie's yeah.
And you started breaking it down. Nowadays, how are you scripting? Are you scripting like Marvel style, where it's very open and loose, or are you scripting tight and so that the artist has a sense of what to put in each panel?
I'm a tight scripter as far as like page breakdowns go. I try to keep the panels basic. The artist on the book, Dominic Black, I try to give him as much room as he can to interpret the script. So yeah, sometimes I feel like I don't write enough because I want him to be able to take it, but he always knocks it out of the park when I give it to him. But yeah, like the number, like my process for breaking it down is like a 3-step process where I write down the pages, how many pages in the story and what needs to be on each page, and then I break each page down into panels, and then from there it's all layered. So my scripts are they're pretty detailed, I would say.
Nice. Now, when you were researching your current Kickstarter, you said now you have packets and folders of huge information on the subject matter. What's your research process like? I mean, do you actually go to some of these places and photographs, talk to people, or do you just like Wikipedia the hell out of it?
A lot of it's internet. A lot of it is definitely internet, or bookstores to see if I can find any valuable written with the Voodoo stuff and culturally and religiously. Luckily I found a decent amount at a couple used bookstores, and so going over those, and a lot of it was just trying to get my mind around the mythology of it all and the perspective, and so yeah, it was poring over stuff, and I'm always on the internet doing research anyway, so it's like down the rabbit hole pretty much,
right,
pretty quickly.
A couple of the friends on we also do cross into like tabletop gaming when we're not talking about indie comics, and the one of our guys is always likes to joke that if the FBI ever saw our search histories because of constantly writing and stuff like that, we'd be locked up as serial killers.
Yeah, I think about that all the time. You just go, I wonder what can I learn about this real quick, and you're like, oh, it's kind of questionable.
That must be tough doing research with a 7-year-old around.
Oh well, luckily my laptop is my laptop, and she knows that. So I've yet to have that. She has her own iTablet or iPad that she's on the YouTube more than she's on the Google searches so far.
Right on. Well, one day when she comes up and says, "Daddy, what's a Loa?" You might have left something.
Yeah. Well, no, that's a great question. Let's talk about it, right?
Right on. So, seeing as we're talking about stuff like this, let's talk about stuff like this. How the hell do you come from, Marvel DC to Voodoo Detective? Talk about it.
So a big part of the Marvel and DC, right? So it kicked off with the superhero stuff, but I very quickly gravitated towards like the Marvel horror comics. Like characters like Blade and Hannibal King. Especially in the 90s at that point when there was that kind of Marvel horror revival, the Midnight Suns and stuff like that. I got really deep into that. Morbius, when they were trying to push Morbius as kind of like that anti-hero kind of thing. I was really hooked into that. So, and even as a kid too, I was really big into the like horror movie monsters, like the old Universal Studios. So I think it was kind of like a natural transition. And I was like, oh, Marvel has a Frankenstein too. Okay, let's check that out. So I think it was always there, and then I think kind of the it's like the theme for the anthology was twisted pulp. So they wanted kind of out there, kind of classic pulpy stories. So a lot of what I did then was research a bunch of old 50s comics, like the old 50s crime and horror. And I was like, all right, well, how can I put these two together to really get a nice feel for what I'm trying to do with this character? So it was pretty organic, I think.
Did you find like it just popped in there one day and you shot straight up in bed and were like, Voodoo Detective. I have to write this.
Well, no. So like a big part of it was just I wanted to get published. I was getting close to the 10-year mark, and I had been spinning my wheels, trying a couple things, didn't work out. And so I was like, I really kind of want to get published. So I wanted something that I felt like was going to be easy to accept, which is why Voodoo Detective is such a, like, the name sells you. I knew if I did something like this, I needed something that people were like, I know what that's about. You know, I'm not gonna have any. I'm into it, or I'm not gonna be into it. I'm gonna know right off the bat. So, the name came first for sure, and then the character came right after.
Nice. Now, you said a lot of your research for this was internet based.
Mm-hmm.
You guys being down in Texas, did you cross state lines and just hop on over to some places that had some of the mojo?
Not yet. I do want to do that. I do got to plan that trip with the girls in school and stuff. In my work life, I got it takes up. That's probably half my life. It's 65% of it's that, and then the other 35 or so is comics. If I can get it in there.
Right on, right on. Well, right now you got you got on Kickstarter, and you're stretch goaling it, and you
I
still
am.
got 10 days to go. How about talking about Mr. Mr. Delmond real quick? Can you give us like a quick breakdown of what Voodoo Detective is about, other than being a voodoo detective?
Right. So yeah, I mean, I describe it as an occult pulp horror comic series. It's serial anthology style, which means it's a collection of short stories featuring the character. But the stories are all interconnected, so they all are. I'm building on a story arc here that I hopefully can take with it. But yeah, he's essentially a New Orleans resident occult investigator, and he's kind of he's not John Constantine. I've had people make that reference, but he's I think he's somebody who's I've said he's got a past that he's trying to maybe make up for, and in doing these things, he's hoping that he can do that. So that's kind of, I don't want to give anything away, right? Spoiler alert heavy.
Right. Now, is he the I can solve your occult problem kind of by accepting PayPal? Stuff like
Does he
that.
get paid for this? You got to think he probably does, right? I think he's someone he's known in circles. I think that's probably a good way to describe it, right? This is the world is it's probably similar to something along the lines of like Buffy, right? Where these things exist. It's maybe not widely known, but there are people who are aware. So it's and especially in New Orleans, the history and the culture is so deep. I think it lends itself to be easily acceptable, right? For these types of stories and these horrors and whatnot. So he makes a living doing what he does. I don't think he does it for the money though.
Now, when you're because as a writer, I'm sure you've sat in places where nobody's watching, and then of course had dialogue with yourself. Do you do like a Creole accent? I mean, does he have a Creole accent?
Oh yeah. No, so he actually is from Haiti. He's Haitian, and that's a big part of his story too. So yeah, I do what I think is the correct accent in my. Yeah, when I do dialogue, it's all I got to say it how I think I'm going to write it, and so you can see that in the way I write his dialogue too. There's I tried to imply an accent there, and I think I did it. It's readable, right? I think it maybe it hopefully it helps. I don't know.
Nice. I got to tell you, the cover image that you have on Kickstarter, very evocative.
Oh yeah, yes.
I love some of the shading effects that bring out the light in what he's doing. I love his look.
Yeah, thanks, man.
Just has a great look.
Yeah, I wanted something simple and striking, and I really wanted to. He kind of adopted a bit of a Luke Cage vibe to him, and I realized, I mean, it's not that hard to pull off like a 3-piece suit, basically. But yeah, so the cover artist is Carlos Caballero, who's a really good friend of mine who was super cool and was like, man, I want to do your cover, and I was like, well, not only are we friends, but I love everything you do, so yeah, you could totally do a cover for my book. Let's do this.
We had Carlos on the show not too long ago.
Oh, for the Golden Guard Kickstarter.
Yes, sir.
Right? Oh, right on, man. That's awesome.
Yeah, right on.
That's awesome. Yeah. So yeah, that was awesome to have him on board, and I love everything he does. But yeah, so Dominic was responsible basically for the look. I kind of said this is what I thought he looked like, and I gave him a couple of, because I think it's important to cast your characters right, to say, you know, I like what the vibe is here, and Dom just took it and ran, um, which is awesome. Like Dominic actually made him a bit bulkier than I had originally envisioned. Not that I didn't think he was a, you know, at least a guy who could take care of himself, but Dom drew him as like a bit of a musclier dude, and he was like, yeah, he's a hands-on guy. I think he needs those muscles to get through some of the things. And I was like, man, I said, yeah, you're right. Actually, he totally does. So it's
Well, I
nice to
mean,
see him. Yeah, take that.
if you're thinking about voodoo zombies and stuff, I mean, you know, I mean, sometimes you got to punch a zombie or two.
Sometimes, yeah, sometimes
So,
you do.
so you'd want to be a big dude for that.
Yeah, I think it
But
definitely
yeah,
works to his advantage.
oh yeah, absolutely. Very evocative look. Um, you, you have the prints that are promised in the Kickstarter. I got to tell you,
Hmm.
uh, Mr. Delmond walking out of that wall of souls or that wall of Loa.
Yeah.
Holy
Oh
crap!
yeah.
Right?
Yes, I am super proud of all the guys that I was able to convince to do pinups for my book. These are all guys I'd love to work with, you know. So that was I was like, I wanted people that one I was a fan of, who again I could say, hey, let's, you know, we do this small thing, and if we work together, well, maybe we can do some more things later on down the line. But I also wanted a bunch of different styles that people would be interested in, right? Because I think that the pinups are cool. I loved pinups as a kid, so I knew I wanted pinups in the book. And I was like, yeah, I'm super stoked to have that. Was Javier Caba's pinup right there with the Jackson walking through that wall of souls.
Dude, that's just. I was scrolling down the page and I was like, wow.
Yeah.
I had to just sit back and watch and just look at that image for a little bit. And my wife is a huge horror fan, so
Hmm.
she came in and she's like, "Yeah, it's creepy, pledge." I was like,
Yeah.
"Going to
Nailed it.
anyway, thank you." So we know who will be reading the book first.
Bro, well, I hope she likes it too. So yeah, so a big thing I did with those, actually, I just so I waited till the stories were done, and then I reached out to guys that I thought would be able to do the book, and I just sent them the book, and I was like, here, read it. You tell me, you know, find something that you like in it, and then come back to me. So I didn't know what they were doing. I gave them full reign, and every one of them nailed it. So that
Right
was
on.
it was perfect.
That's awesome. Now, uh, I get a lot of email from people who
Hmm.
listen to the show and they like that we delve into questions sometimes about like process
Hmm.
and how things are working. Um, how did you reach out and find artists like Carlos and stuff like that? Were you checking out other Kickstarters? I mean,
Uh,
what
yeah,
kind of things did
I'm
you?
constantly on the lookout. So I probably about 2, 3 years ago, I totally shifted my Facebook page from like a personal page to a comics centric Facebook environment. I felt like I needed to kind of get myself out there as a guy who wanted to write, was really into comics, and wanted to collaborate. I met Carlos through Facebook. He and I were going to work on a project together a couple years ago. It was the thing that we were pretty focused on. It fell through, unfortunately, but we luckily remained friends. But yeah, I, I always, I guess I just was okay with reaching out and just telling people how much I enjoyed their work. Was the easiest way. You just fill them with compliments, and then, and if they
Throw
were
a little
receptive,
cash.
yeah, and then, absolutely right. That was it. Compliments and cash. That's what you need if you want to get somebody to work with you, and you know, something worth working on if you can if you can muster it.
Right on. So like now, do you go through like Tumblr? Do you scroll through or go to the comic shop and look at art and be like, hey,
Yeah, I'm always on the lookout for artists, because it's fat. I'm always interested to see like early artists, like where they got their start in, and you can find those in old collections, or I'll find artists that I don't I'm not even familiar with, but the style is really good. So I'm like, oh man, are you still making comics? Like I don't really know who you are, but you know, you were working on Robin in 2008. Like, are you still making comics now? Let me check you out and see if I can find you. And so yeah, I've done research that way too, but a lot of it is just I what comes through my Facebook feed. I'm 90% on Facebook.
I can only do so much. It gets toxic after a bit.
Yeah, I try to cultivate a more positive environment. You
Right
know,
on.
the
Right on.
negativity gets a bit too much, but I try to. I don't know. That's a weird one.
It's weird too because like on one side I have all of like writers and artists, and on the other side I have all these like military guys. So
Right.
like one side of the wall screaming at the other side of the wall. So it's
That's very true, right?
gets
That's
pretty weird.
yeah. It's
we got multiple levels, but you got more than just the books on here. You got shirts. You got some. It looks like stickers. I think they're stickers.
Now we do. It's a stretch goal. We unlock these stickers because my oldest likes stickers and I like stickers. So when I told her, I was like, I think we're gonna get to do stickers. She was like, can we have some? And I was like, yeah, we could keep a couple.
Yeah. But a lot of good stuff on here. And then,
Thanks,
of course, you can download the digital ash can, like you were saying. And once again, another evocative image. You got him pulling out some spiritual energy, just standing there looking all Luke Cage, and it just, the look really is very, very groovy because he's got that working man's look.
Yeah.
But yet, there's like an edgy, kind of like a forward pressure to the way he looks. You talk about designing a character like that. Did you just say, make a brother mean, or like?
No, I mean, I think I did. I knew. So I think I wanted to kind of, with the keeping of like the kind of like pulpy aspect of it, I thought, the crime side, I was like, a suit looks good, a collared shirt, the vest, the slacks, the rolled up sleeves. It kind of, I guess, he looks sharp, but at the same time, he's somebody who's not afraid to get dirty, I think. So like the bare feet is something that I thought was interesting, right? That in my head, I was like, I think this is a guy who, he doesn't wear shoes when he's working because I think that's important to him to kind of be in touch with what's going on, if that makes any sense. So that was something. And then the rolled up sleeves, I was like, well, I want something visual. And I had this idea before I came up with Voodoo Detective. I had this character at first that I thought might be a cool character to base a short story on. And I still think it's a cool character. It was too much for the story that I was trying to do with that one. And so when I came back and I thought, well, Voodoo Detective, I kept one of this aspect to him with these kind of ethereal, what ended up being snakes, with Jackson. So yeah, it was simple, but at the same time, I wanted something that readers would be able to look at and be like, I know who this is. So yeah, the twin snakes, I thought that was just cool. Did you ever watch the? So Stallone did that Get Carter remake.
Yes.
Do you remember that? And he had those two giant panthers on his arm. I think that might have had something to do with it because I remember watching that being like, I grew up loving Rocky. And so when he came out as Carter, I was like, oh shit, Stallone's a badass, like a badass. And I think those two twin panthers might have had something to do with it. So I think that could have been a part of what I gravitated towards with Jackson here because he's definitely a badass.
Now, when you're writing stuff like this, you have this big, huge, wild personality. This is a guy that deals with mystical problems, and he's basically a problem solver. What kind of people does he encounter? Does he encounter, does he encounter the stereotypes that you might think from a story like this, or are they normal people that just, for some reason, have come into contact with this kind of stuff, and he's the guy to fix it?
I think it's a little bit of both. I think some of it are people stumbling onto these things, again, without giving away too much. There's some are people that, just happen to have these things thrust upon them. Some of them are people who are trying to use these, I guess, say magic, these powers, these energies, these spirits. They're, some of them are trying to reach out to them and they don't realize what they're getting into. So some of it is Jackson having to come in and clean up the mess. Some of it is people coming to Jackson with problems. So some of it, so Jackson, I'm trying to think, again, I don't want to spoil anything because I want people to just read it and enjoy it. But I think, like I said, Jackson is known in the community, so people do come to Jackson. There's small circles. The local police, he has a contact there who brings him in on cases that they can't figure out, where things don't quite add up. They bring Jackson in, and we're really kind of pushing that idea of like the Louisiana, New Orleans kind of hoodoo, voodoo. It's prominent. This isn't kind of one of those kitchen sink type supernatural stories where you get everything all at once, but so a lot of it's cultural, right? I really wanted to keep in tune with that. that idea. So it's very voodoo, kind of New Orleans hoodoo centric. So like him being involved kind of makes sense, if that makes sense.
Right. Now, you had also mentioned that that he's from Haiti
He is.
originally.
Mm-hmm.
Do you delve into any of those types of issues in the book, like being in a foreign country, being
No. So when he shows up, he's established, and we show that in the first 3 pages of the first story that he is someone who is known. Like he's essentially brought in. And I think I say this on the Kickstarter, so I don't think I'm ruining it. He's brought in on a case, right? So he's somebody who's already kind of established. Now, how long has he been there? I know that. We don't really talk too much about that, and we tap, a little bit. There's some hints at some things that Jackson is dealing with or has dealt with that I'm really excited to reach out and kind of deal with in bigger circles. But it's a slow burn. Jackson's past is something that we're going to get in bits and pieces, because what he's doing now, it really kind of dictates the stories that we're moving forward. But a lot of his past is catching up to him, as we'll see as hopefully the story progresses.
right on. The art is just absolutely fun, especially clowns running from car accidents. And
yeah.
well,
So that's another one too, right? So yeah, there's both human and supernatural here. Jackson has to combat both, and yeah, that was a fun one. I like that one. That one might be my favorite story of the collection.
now, does he ever roll his eyes because he knows that if somebody would just call the cell phone, it would ring and he wouldn't have to find it?
That's a good question. Now that I think about it, yeah, he probably would, right?
Or does he just take the job, take the money, and find the cell phone anyway by calling it?
Yeah. Well, if they're calling him about a cell phone, I think they're calling the wrong person. He's probably going to be like, maybe just have your friend call your phone.
Right. I think the Loas are giving my passwords away.
Right.
So for people who are not familiar with the voodoo culture and the culture of Haiti and those of Creole descent, is there a way to ease that people, when they read the book, are eased into this, or is it sprinkled, peppered?
It is. There's a peppering. A lot of these first 4 stories, they're real action heavy. I'll be honest with you. They're more about the things that Jackson has to deal with. I really wanted to kind of set the tone for that pretty early on. And there is some peppering of some things. We mentioned spirits. We don't really. I've always been a fan of stories that ask me to keep up with the writer and the reading and the narrative, and so I think I probably am asking a bit of that of my fans. They're quick stories. I know that they're written. I show up late and I leave early. That was intentional. So my whole point was to give you something that's an entire. I don't want to say adventure, really a case, but an entire narrative. But there's lingering questions. So and a lot of that has to do with these spirits and who's who and what's what. We see some things that aren't quite explained, but hopefully will get to be explained. So. I don't know if that answers your question.
No, absolutely. Another cool thing. Have you ever had anybody reach out from the community and be like, "Hey, I deal with this stuff"?
Yes, I actually have.
This is cool.
Yeah, that is cool. I don't want to butcher his name, as I don't know how to pronounce it correctly. But I have had a few people reach out and offer some guidance, and one of them actually, though, I can say is Greg Anderson Elise, who's on Kickstarter right now with his Isnana, the Were Spider. He's actually of Haitian descent, and I've been able to reach out to him, and we've talked a bit about a story that I've yet to really put together, but I was working it, and I asked him for a bit of help trying to get my head wrapped around it, because I wanted to approach it in the right way. But he was like, you need to be careful about some things that you do, and if you're going to do this, you need to don't forget to stay respectful, and I'm like, yeah, absolutely, 100%. So he's like, just be careful, because some people they take it, it's their religion, it's their culture, and they take it very seriously. So don't forget that. So yeah, I was like, yeah, we'll go back and double check my facts here.
That feels like you had this great tagline in the beginning, Voodoo Detective, and then somebody just put 100 pound of weight on your shoulders to.
Yes, no, you're right. I took on the responsibility here of wanting to be respectful, because it is far more interesting than what we think of when we think of voodoo. Like in comics especially, voodoo has a pretty two-dimensional bad rap. I mean, I think that's pretty fair to say. From like the 50s and on, it's more tropish, and it's so fat. The culture is so fascinating. The lowest spirits that they worship, it runs the gamut. It's almost like a pantheon, right? And you invoke these spirits, and you you offer to these spirits in an effort to try to have them. I don't want to say help you, because that's a really selfish way of looking at it, right? You try to how do I say it? You want to represent them accurately, and have them, if they accept your offer, come back and I guess in a way kind of bless you. I don't know if I'm using the right terminology here, but
Right
back
on.
to what you were saying. I'm really careful about how I say it, because I don't want to come across as a stupid guy who just thought he was going to use something cool to make comics. I want it to be more than that, So yeah, I definitely took on coming into this. I was like, I got to do it right. I can't half-ass it. That's for sure.
Right on. Right on. Yeah, you see that with comics like you ever hear of The Activity?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, the guys on that, they were approached by special operators, and they were like,
Mm-hmm.
"Hey, look, if you're going to do this the way you're trying to do this, um, we're sending you plane tickets. You need to come train with us for a while."
Right. And I
Yeah.
think that's super important. I think so. I want to say, was it Grant Morrison told that story, I think, about Jeff Johns a while back, where Grant Morrison was saying how Jeff Johns didn't, I think it was when he was writing Green Lantern, he was like, he didn't know what it was like to be a test pilot. So he went out, and luckily they got to take him on a trip, and he got to feel what it was like. And Grant Morrison was like, that's crazy. I just would have made it up. And Jeff Johns was like, no, I got to know. So I think I'm more like Jeff Johns. Like, no, I got to know. I got to understand it. But yeah, that story always makes me laugh when I think about it.
Right on. So, and diving into this culture, have you tried any of the food?
Well, luckily, because I am this far south, there is some Cajun cuisine down here. I don't want to say that I make my own well, but I've tried it. I do enjoy. I make gumbo, and I make oh jeez, it will come back to me. I'll remember it. The name of the dish.
So, what have you
Oh.
what have you learned as far as this process goes so far? I mean, have you gotten some sort of insight into how this whole indie comic scene works, or is it just make comics and shout it out to the rooftops?
No, 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 no. So as much as I'm into researching comics, I'm into researching the market that I'm in. I'm into researching the avenues I'm trying to explore. I mean, I spent even as far back as when Carlos and I were working on that project. I was looking at Kickstarter. I've been active on Kickstarter for over 2 years now. Really trying to understand how it works, how it doesn't work, and how to make sure it works the way you want it to. So I'm super proud of the success that we've had on the book. Funding in 5 days is huge for a first time creator.
Right on.
Yeah, I mean, I had a number in my head. So, are you familiar with the Comics Launch podcast?
Oh yeah.
Tyler James. Yeah. Okay.
Yep.
So, I'm a student of Tyler's teaching. So I had a pretty good idea what I wanted, what I thought I could expect with the project. So a lot of like the rewards were all based on what I thought were people would gravitate towards. So definitely more research oriented. As far as like, I guess like the indie comics scene, I guess like that's the best part about indie comics, right? It's anything goes. So there's a place for everything. It's important to make sure that what you're doing is seen by the right kinds of fans of indie comics. That was a big thing, reaching out to people that, and a lot of them actually find me, which is super cool. And I think a lot of that has to do with the artwork and stuff. But yeah, I'm learning more and more about indie comics as we go on.
Now,
Mhm.
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Oh no, I was gonna say more just like the business side of comics. Right, that's super important to understand all aspects of comics making, because I don't think today you can just write comics. I think you need to know how to get them out there, how to market them. I mean, you're everything, right? You're a DIY all the way if you're making comics. So
Right on.
it doesn't stop with the script being sent.
So you're pretty much pimping on Facebook,
Oh yeah.
throwing out linked Twitter accounts and blah blah blah
Oh
blah.
yeah, definitely, and trying to keep it positive. I think that's a big thing, right? I think with Kickstarter campaigns, you have to keep it. You got to keep it inviting people, and there's a fine line between an invitation and I don't know.
You knocking at 5 p.m. when everybody's
Yeah,
trying to have
right. It's
dinner.
like yeah. So I'm trying to pepper these in throughout the day in a way. It's just like, hey, don't forget, come on, let's go. If you're waiting, don't wait. Come on. So yeah, that's been interesting. I didn't think I was good at marketing. Turns out I'm actually better at it than I thought I was. So
Right on. Right on. Now, how has the marketing been? Have you seen a lot of response from what you're throwing out coming back?
yeah, I have. I really have. It's been interesting. I've had a few Facebook specific pages pick it up, and it's gotten a lot of really good response. A lot of the same Facebook groups that I post will be. I actually there's so many that I do. I don't want to blast like 10 or 15 pages all at once. I try to, I'll do like 5 or 6 in the morning. I'll do a couple more in the afternoon and try to hit them in the evenings. And I don't always remember which ones I did. but so if I miss one, I'll have someone who will message me and be like, hey, what's going on with this? And I'm like, shoot, okay, I missed that one. So, I'll make sure I post on there. So people want to know, which is great. I was going to launch the campaign in July was the initial plan, and I had some personal issues that I had to step back, and it wasn't a good time. So I was kind of nervous. I had been really starting to gear up, May, June for this July launch, and had to take a 3 months off to come back, and I didn't know if people were going to be there. I got kind of nervous, right? I was like, oh, I think maybe I missed my window. I don't know. And luckily, when I came back, I had even more people who were interested. So it was a really reassuring feeling. So
Couldn't hurt that you're doing Supernatural during October either.
well, yeah, it kind of was like, if you're gonna do it, now's the time to do it. If you miss this mark, you might not get the audience their attention as much. So yeah, I think I kind of was a bit pushed against the wall on that one. I felt like I had to pull a trigger.
Right on. Now the world that you're building,
Mm-hmm.
with this first collection of stories, obviously there's a lot of places you can go with this, and you're seeing a rise in popularity of this kind of storytelling. Comics companies like Valiant are picking them up with titles like Punk Mambo and Shadow Man. Um,
Mm-hmm.
you have a lot of indie guys that are just jumping all over this. Do you have plans to expand the world even further? And uh, basically, what I'm asking is, what comes next? I mean, you got the funding, so I
Right.
mean,
So yeah, no. So the part of the stretch goals are to fund the next book. That's something that I definitely want to keep building. I know where this is going. I have so we're doing these in books, right? Because I don't know how long it's going to take to do this. I didn't know how well the funding was going to be. The things as much as I planned for them, I just didn't know how it was going to shape out. So I wanted to do these kind of they're 48 pages, so they're basically twice as big as a normal comic book. Um, so I wanted to give readers enough in these books, as I'm calling them, to give me time to do more. But I know. So the plan is to do 4 books, and then I want to transition into like the old Marvel giant size. I want to do a giant size Voodoo Detective.
the omnibus.
It kind of, but just to wrap up. So like because they're 8-page stories. So I'm threading the needle throughout each of them, and I want to do this giant size to kind of just tug on that thread and bring it all together and kind of culminate this arc that I'm building towards here, and then take it where I know it's going to go next. So I do have a long form plan for this. I don't know how it's all going to shape up. I think we'll keep with the 8-page stories for the entirety of this kind of arc, and then I'd like to transition into longer form, maybe like full length single issues, and kind of do the same concept if the audience is there. So yeah, I do have plans. I do want to keep going with the character. He's somebody who takes up a lot of time in my head.
Right on. Now, do you recommend that other Kickstarter creators sit in a coffee shop with mellow music to help them deal with the stress?
It can be nice if it's a nice coffee shop, right? I mean, if you're comfortable there, yeah, it's a nice place to go and chill. It's just down the street from my house. So I have a. She'll be 10 months tomorrow, and we're all actually we're all a bit sick now. The weather changes around here. We're all dealing with it. So she's been kind of fussy. So I was like, I'm not going to ask you guys to leave. I'll head out.
Right on.
Hopefully they're liking the music though. It's nice.
Right. No, it's very soothing. I'm rough night at the office, so I can dig it.
I understand.
How have you been as far as promoting in conventions? Do you go to conventions?
I've been to a few conventions. I didn't. So this kind of goes back to being a kid who just did comics on his own. I didn't realize most of my comics experience came from Wizard magazine, right? As a kid, like full on was I read. Looking back, there were, a lot of them were puff pieces. I see it now, but yeah, like Wizard was a big part of everything I got. So like, I guess I didn't realize conventions were a thing until I was like an adult. And I've gone to a few, and they're fun, and I like it. My first one was like an awesome experience. It was like I was overwhelmed by all the comics. I'd never that like there's like Amazing Spider-Man #1. I've seen it, but I've never seen one like in person. So that was like an awesome experience. But I do want to take this, the success that we make from here and go to conventions, because I think that's important. I do want to table at conventions. That's kind of a weird thing. I don't know how. I hear a lot of guys talk about conventions and their experiences with it, and it's hit or miss. I think it depends on why you're there, right? I think it's feels like it's pulling away from the comics and pushing a lot more on the pop culture, and I think that's hard for some people. But I think it's a great place to meet and greet and to build an audience that's interested in what you're doing, and to rub elbows a bit, get your book in front of certain editors. So that's right. I mean, that's what we want. You want to get your stuff out there to the people who want to see it and
absolutely
hire you.
Absolutely. So if the CW or Sci-Fi Channel approaches you, who do you got on the short list to play Jackson?
Well, in my head, Idris Elba, right?
Thought about it,
yeah, I've thought about it. Right? Come on.
Right, Idris Elba, he'd be perfect.
You ever watch Luther?
Yes.
The BBC, right?
Yes.
Yeah, I see the way he walks, and I'm like, oh, shit, that's Jackson. I just need a different accent. Like that's Jackson to me.
And the timbre of his voice, I could listen to that guy read me his list of groceries every day.
Oh, absolutely. Like I want to be friends with Idris Elba. I really do.
We'll make sure we tag him on Twitter when this goes up.
There you
go. So if people want to stalk you on the internet, what's the best way to do that?
You can find me on Twitter. I'm learning to tweet. Right, Twitter's a little faster than I'm capable of, but I am on Twitter and at R Thomas Favino, and I am on Facebook at Rick Favino, RIK Favino. And then you can actually follow Voodoo Detective on Facebook at Voodoo Detective. So yeah, that's where I'm at now. I had a Tumblr. I don't use it anymore.
Right on. Now, any plans for live casting or anything like that during the rest of the campaign? Interviews or questions and answers sessions, anything like that?
I do want to do that.
Like Facebook Live or something.
Yeah,
right?
I've thought about it. I'm nervous, right? It makes me a bit nervous. I do the audio. I've never really done the video, so I dabble with it, but it makes me a little nervous. I think I need to get over that fear and just kind of go out there and do it, though. I know that according to Tyler, you get way more activity that way and way more interest that way. So you kind of have to. I think you gotta bite the bullet and do the things that make you uncomfortable.
Yep. Yeah, that was my 20s.
Yeah, mine too.
Also, why I limp. Now, Facebook is a great place to find you, and then Voodoo Detective. We can. If you just go on Kickstarter, just type in Voodoo Detective. Say a little prayer before you do, though, because Loa, and people should definitely come out and support this. Is there anything that you'd like your audience to know before we call it a day?
Well, what I do want to say to the people that have already backed me is how thankful I am. My support, the people that came out and backed the book, I've already exceeded what I thought was going to be my total backers by like almost 50%. And so I'm super grateful for everyone that's already come out and back to the book and seems to be super interested in it. For people that are maybe waiting to come on and back the book, hey, we're already funded. This thing's going to happen, right? You're pre-ordering the book now. And then we're kicking out those stretch goals, and we're trying to make it the best book that we can make it, and hopefully be able to make more. So if you guys could help us, that'd be great. We'd love to have you on board.
That's awesome. To creators out there who are thinking about putting their toe into the indie waters, any messages or words of encouragement?
Yes. Take your time. Build, I would say, be the person you want people to follow before you come out and ask people to follow you. It takes time. It takes time to get yourself out there and to be a real person. If you just come out and just ask people to support you and they don't really know who you are and don't really know what you're doing, it's going to be hard to get that support. So take your time, build a fan base, build the interest, build the brand.
Right on. Hey, Rick, thank you so much for coming out and also for sharing some time with a fellow Rhode Islander.
Oh man, absolutely. I didn't even know you were from Rhode Island. That makes it so much cooler. I was just there like 2 weeks ago, visiting my family. So
well, the next time you come up, hit me up. Lunch is on me.
Absolutely will. Oh, awesome, man. That's perfect.
And we can hit a couple of comic shops on the way. It'll be a thing.
That's awesome, man. I appreciate it.
Of course, there is that one shop they won't let me in anymore, but
Oh yeah,
it's a thing.
It's a thing. I get it.
But everybody should go out immediately and back the amazing Voodoo Detective, Old Wounds and Other Tales, which makes the title even cooler. Rick, once again, thank you so much for coming out. I really appreciate it.
Thanks so much for having me, man. It's been a blast.
Awesome. And we'll catch you next time on the Banff Podcast.